Welcome to On the Front Lines. We are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. You can put in your questions on any of the platforms that we are on. Today we are with Arundhati Ghosh from the India Foundation for Arts. Welcome, Arundhati.
Thank you so much, Rishabh. Thanks for having me here.
Right. Congratulations on starting your third fundraiser to help the arts. I want to start by asking, in the context of your third fundraiser, P. Sainath on several of his interviews has said that crafts-based livelihoods form the second biggest sort of livelihoods after agriculture in rural India. And COVID has completely halted anything that is considered, so to say, non-essential. How has this affected arts and crafts in rural India?
Look, Rishabh, it's interesting that we are asking the questions we should have always asked, but at least we are asking it now. I think what COVID has done is it has suddenly whisked away the blanket of lies that we had put across our various economies, across agriculture, across the lives of our crafts and arts people from rural India. So things like demonetization, the GST had already broken their backs in many ways. The consistent lack of support of easy financial schemes or easy accessibility to markets were already things that were affecting the sector very badly. COVID is like the last straw. So it's not like, suddenly we have a crisis. The crisis was simmering. The crisis was already there. What has happened now is that in the worst way possible, at the worst time possible, we now actually have families who are bereft of anything. And the worry is that it is not short term. All the pretenses of support, all the pretenses of well-being that we were imagining the sector to have has suddenly been blown away by a storm. So once we get out of this turbulence, out of this crisis, the market is still going to be very sluggish. The market is still going to take time to respond. And the idea is, what will the lives of these people be after we, cross through this crisis? Are we going to just go back to what was before? Because we keep saying, let's return to normal. That wasn't normal. The way this sector over a period of time, for the last many, many decades, have been starved of the support that they need from government, from everywhere possible. I think that's what we need to look at now. Not just in terms of, emergency support we can give now, but we need to really look at the ecology of the various structures within the sector. And that's not just talking about the rural sector and crafts, etc. If you look at artists, performing artists, say, who've hugely lost audiences, right? So without assembly, performing artists have no audiences now. Whether it is rural sector, whether it is the urban sector, whether it is contemporary artists or it is traditional artists, the issues remain the same. I think what has suddenly happened is that a country that every time it has to boast, it uses its rich arts and culture heritage. Every time we have to wield soft power internationally, we put together a Festival of India. But actually, how little we care about the arts and culture sector within the country, how little governments do, is kind of staring us at our faces. This was always there. People within the sector like us always knew it. And we have been cribbing and fighting and, pushing and pulling and then getting totally cynical about government support and doing things on our own. But now it is out there for everyone to see. So, so that's the case.
So you're saying that the arts was always a fragile sector, and given the kind of policy regulation that's been around for the last 3-4 years, it was already somewhat broken, and this pretty much was the straw on the camel's back.
Yes, I'm saying that, Rishabh, also because if you look at, you can begin at the beginning, which is what percentage of our budget do we keep for arts and culture, both at the center and at the state level. Then we can talk about, given that that much money is given to arts and culture, how much of it is spent on, state or public institutions, and what do they do with that money? Where is the accountability? Then you come to outside of that, the money that is given out as scholarships, as grants, as support. What are those areas? What does it do for the sector? How are they chosen? The opaqueness of how our government uses this. That's why some countries have an arts council, and they believe that arts councils across the world, they have an arm's length from the government, so that they take independent sort of decisions for the arts and culture sector, though the money is public money, like you have in the UK or you have in Australia and some other countries. And that's important because finally it is run by experts, who understand the sector. In this country, we don't have that, right? Our ministries and state departments run it. Great, even if they run it. But do they ask artists, what schemes should be there? Do they do consultations? Do they take those consultations seriously and then spend the money? So, this is like opening up a huge Pandora's box. Once a very good friend of mine, a theatre director, had said that, Sunil Shanbag, he had said that, if you look at the last 50, 60 years and look at the various initiatives in the arts and culture, which has actually benefited the sector, they are all things that were started by people within the sector. They are all either individual or collective efforts of artists, art supporters, individual citizens, civic society groups. You will hardly find anything that actually comes from the government, any government that has been in power. So it is really lamentable that it took such a terrible disease and such a atrocious time for us to look at the art sector and ask these questions. But I'm glad we are asking.
Many of the artists across India are pretty much, self-reliant. So they could be performers in a temple. They could be, uh, local art forms, folk art forms, right? Yet, when it comes to looking at them as daily wage laborers, they've been largely excluded in the narrative. Why do you think that's happened? Why doesn't popular imagination cover independent performers in various parts of India?
It's a wonderful question, and the best questions are those for which there aren't any immediate answers, right? Or there are many possibilities of answers. I think you said something very interesting. You said these artists have been self-reliant. I think because there is no other option. Artists in India, whether they are rural artists or they are urban artists, whether they're traditional, contemporary, whichever artists don't have an option. It's not like they are self-reliant because they want to be self-reliant. It's just that there is no other system that they can fall back on. So if you look at daily wage laborers, on the other hand, where are they going? Where is the support from them coming? Also, na? So even if artists were considered daily wage laborers, would it be better? I'm not sure, because again, look at the organizations that are supporting migrant workers or organizations that are supporting labor in general in the country today. It's not the government. What is coming out of is citizens. I mean, if you go to ourdemocracy.in, you will see several campaigns which are being run by collectives, small NGOs, individuals who are raising support. When I look around in Bangalore, all the support that I see, all the help that I see is going from citizens who are organizing, mobilizing, risking their lives, and actually supporting. I see so little of the government, so little of the government. So, I mean, whether artists are considered labor or not, it's like, it's the same coin, this side and that side. It's not like they're going to be any better equipped to receive support. But on the other hand, I also feel that, most of us, middle class people, we like receiving the joys of the arts. We go to the arts when we are happy, we go to the arts when we are grieving, we go to the arts to heal, to ask questions, to resist, we do all of that. But somehow in our heads, the arts are Swayambhu. That they don't need support, they're just created. Some genius is sitting somewhere and this idea just dawns upon her, and then that art is born without any help or support from anywhere. We like imagining that because in some way it takes care of our responsibilities. So then we don't have to be responsible. So when the book has reached the shelf, I can buy the book and read it. But I don't ask the question whether my 500 rupees that I'm spending on the book actually takes care of the writer's livelihood or not. And the writer may have a husband, may have 2 kids, may have a mother to look after. But I'm not asking that question. I'm not asking the ecological question of how the economies actually function in the arts. So whether it is a writer or a folk artist or a musician, when I pay for the ticket, I don't think twice about, so how does this person make a living? The assumption is wo to kuch to karta hoga. Like earlier, all theatre people in Kolkata had some kind of a government job. They either worked in some bank or the railways or somewhere, there was a job that they did, and in the evening they would come and do group theatre. Some of the best theatre came out of that. But the idea that there can be professional theatre groups where even today, for a person in theatre to just do theatre and survive, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of risk, a lot of guts, and is hardly possible without some kind of fallback option. It's a hard life. So the self-reliance is not a choice. You just have to be self-reliant.
So you made an interesting point that, from the point of conceptualizing a book till the time it reaches a bookshelf, there's an entire journey there.
Yeah.
So, an artist's art is developed over several years, and a show or a book or a production only covers the marginal cost of the art.
Of course.
Do you think as a result of this pandemic, there will be a slowing down of even whatever little push we had towards the arts? Do you think people will be discouraged from pursuing the arts?
So see, at India Foundation for the Arts, we have been doing these listening posts just to understand what have been some of the anxieties, some of the worries and concerns that artists across disciplines have. And what I want to share with you here is a structure that has a pattern of concern that's emerged, and that might respond to your question. So I see this structure as the first point of concern has been the self, the immediate idea of will I be able to earn? Will I have an income? And slightly long-term way of saying that over a period of time, my negotiating power will become less because nobody will prioritize the arts, So the work that I charge, say 30,000 to do a set of television web series. Tomorrow, somebody will say that, hey, look, guys, I can only give you 20,000 and I have to accept it because I'll have no work. So this negotiating power with the industry will become less. Also, from the point of the self, which is the first point, there is this question about what will my art become? So if theater is a collective experience, if dance is a collective experience, if music is a collective experience, how will I even make art without that assembly being possible? So how will it affect my art? Then, of course, is the second question of the larger discipline, that even if I did make it, where is the audience? Where will I go? What is going to happen to venues of the arts? Whether it is private or public spaces, whether it is auditoriums or the street, where will this art be in contact with the receiver of that art? And how will that change the parameters of the discipline or field? So that's a second layer of concern, from the self to the discipline and the field. The third layer of concern is of the larger ecology, which is what you are talking about. The larger ecology within which the arts and culture actually sustain itself, right? So you have schools that teach art. You have schools, therefore, that hire artists. You have the education system that hires people from the arts. You have support organizations, which are either very few of them, like IFA, which are doing funding or in some way trying to support artists. Now, all of these institutions, the various players of the ecology, what are they going to do now? Are they going to like lower their support? Are they, because support will be something has always been seen as more vital. Now, because we do fundraising all the time for the arts, we know over the last 19 years, I've noticed that the arts has always been, if at all, on the agenda, the last item. India being the country it is, we need food, we need shelter, roti, kapra, makan, health, all of that. And therefore, the arts is not considered. Though the art is roti, kapra, makan for the artist, that's not seen as livelihood or as key concern. So now the worry is that it will be even less considered. Priorities will be even less. The fourth one is the artist's concern for the larger world. How is the economic situation of the world going to shift? What will the markets be like? Will authoritarian powers, political powers, become more authoritarian, taking this, this excuse of security and safety? Is that going to hamper on the freedom of speech even more or not? Because that directly affects arts and artists and the cultural practitioners, right? And the fifth one is, this comes back to the self. This larger question comes back to the self. Then what becomes the role of the artist now? In this changed reality that many of us are calling altered reality, we don't even know the levels of alterations it's going to go through. But how is that changed reality now going to define me as an artist, and what is my relationship with the world? What role will I be playing? So I think artists are thinking through this a lot, and the worries, the concerns, it really bothered me to listen to them, because they're very deep concerns. It's not just about whether I'm going to make money or not. It's about forms, it's about how relationships with audiences are going to change. It's about how digitization is going to impact work. What is it going to do to the aesthetics of the form? It is many, many, many things. But it's also the larger socio-political condition that we will find our country in, where artists play a key role, in always speaking truth to power, in asking questions. So all that is going to be impacted.
You made a very interesting point about artists and art being very directly linked to freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
Yeah.
So do you think that art will have a limited place in society if we become more centralized, if we have less democratic space?
It's an interesting question, and it's interesting from 2 points of view. One, that the answer could be any number of things. I could say yes, and all of those things would be true. So I could say yes, that the more we lose democratic spaces and the more we lose our rights, the more we give in to authoritarian powers, we will be more and more fearful of doing art and talking through the arts. But on the other hand, we have also seen that in the
I'll
worst
have
times.
to interrupt you. I think there is something wrong with our audio.
Okay.
We'll take a 30-second break
Okay,
while
sure.
we fix this technical.
Sure. Let me know.
think he's paused the feed for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're back again.
Okay. Super.
Sorry for the brief interruption.
Yeah.
Yes, so Arundhati, you were talking about freedom of expression.
Yeah, so I'm saying that it is true that when there are less democratic spaces, we have less rights are taken away from us, the powers of authoritarian governments increase. Doing arts and resisting through the arts and asking questions through the arts become a more difficult job, actually becomes a riskier job, right? But what we have also seen through history is every time that has happened, artists have found ways to speak. And artists have found ways of some more openly and some in more subversive ways, have always figured out how to do it and how to make their point go across, how to critique the powers that are there. But it becomes riskier for the artists. It becomes riskier to the point of that their lives are at risk. And we know that, right? I mean, we know how artists have been exiled from this country and who've never come back. We know artists within the country who have been jailed for saying even a small thing against the whichever government is the ruling party at that point of time. So artists anyway lead very fragile and risky lives. The more we are fearful, the more we want safety and security, and the more the state keeps telling us that, oh, we should be very scared of our lives and this freedom. So we negotiate for less freedom. We negotiate freedom for safety. So we are okay with saying, okay, I'll use this app as long as it keeps me safe. I don't mind if little bit of my personal data is used. So we are compromising little by little. We are giving up our privacies. We are giving up our various freedoms that we have as individuals, and that's scary. And I know, and I believe this, that artists in this country have always and will continue to speak about this and against this.
So, Arundhati, this situation, the COVID-19 situation, pretty much struck us, in a way where none of us were prepared to deal with it. And many festivals, many programs were cancelled across the country. Some well-to-do events and some popular events were also cancelled. What's been the impact of this across the organized arts industry, so to say?
Right now, a huge deal of uncertainty. That's because it's not even like we have a guarantee by which we know everything will be safe, right? Everything is in a have postponed a lot of these events. We don't know when they'll come back because we don't know whether is safe or December is safe. We don't even know how public is going to react to when the lockdown opens up, and we are able to, for example, go to office, go about our everyday work. How long will it take for us to go back to crowded spaces? And look, India itself, we are already a very dense population. So we are already stuck to each other. So when you look at public transport, when you look at public venues, when is all of that going to be, if I may use the word, normal again? Uncertainty, I think, is the biggest thing. The other thing is that because of this uncertainty, we are also losing a lot of confidence. Not the large organizations, but say small organizations, which are still at a fledgling level. They're still struggling 2-3 years into producing really great arts festivals or art programs. Right now, they're on the verge of being totally eliminated because they worked from one festival to another. They worked from one set of grants to another. And now that it's totally uncertain when we are going to come back, to put it simply, nobody's paying the salaries of the people. So Actually, I must talk to you about the other campaign, which is the Ada campaign, which Shiva Mudgal, Anish Pradhan, Rahul Bora, Mona Irani, Samira Iyengar, and me, individuals had put together. This was initially to raise funds we raised funds for about 132 folk artists' homes across 10 states, where we were able to give 5,000 rupees a month for 6 months. So about 30,000 rupees, which was given to them to tide over this time. But as you know, people, 6 of us sat, we discussed, and once we were able to raise the money, we are really thankful to all the donors who supported us. We wanted to raise 35, but we landed up raising 42 lakhs. But we said that this is not enough. So what we actually did is we've written to all the 29 chief ministers of the 29 states a letter with an action plan for the arts and culture sector and a scheme of 3 different kinds of grants, which we put our heads together, which we feel is the need of the art. And I want to explain the 3 grants because I think that's where the need is currently, The first grant that we're saying is just an emergency fund. This is more like what one could imagine as the universal basic income. This should go to everybody who's in need today. And well, it could be people who earn below a certain level, but this should go to each and every arts and cultural practitioner who are finding it difficult to make ends meet today below a certain income level. So this we call the emergency fund. The second one is the sustainability fund. This is so that artists and cultural practitioners continue doing what they're doing. So this is small amounts of money to be given to anybody who applies with a project. So it's a 30,000, rupees grant. But this will enable a theatre maker, a songwriter, a craftsperson to continue doing their work. So they can do a little project around something. So they're not sitting idle doing nothing. This is not just money support, it's also a confidence builder. It's also something that will keep them sane during this really hard time. And the third grant is essentially for small organizations. And we are calling this the Lean On grant, just a Lean On grant, saying pay for minimum salaries of some people of small organizations which are involved in cultural activity. So they are organizing small biennales, they're organizing small maybe festivals and programs and initiatives, and suddenly they are at a loss right now. Help support those small sort of non-profit organizations. And we are saying let all these people, so the government already gives some amount of funding to some organizations. They have salary grants and some individuals, scholars, etc. These should be outside of that list. These should be people who don't get any government support now. And I think we feel in Ada, all of us, that this is what the state government should do. So let's see. I mean, we've written to all the 29 chief ministers, and we hope at least some of them look at this. Because if you see the 6 of us together, it's more than 100 years of experience in the sector. And we've really thought through this. So we hope that enables some initiative.
So a lot of what you're saying comes across as, the need for the state or the need for the government to back the arts, irrespective of whether you're in urban India or whether you're in rural India, irrespective of whether you're a rural artisan or an urban sort of gig performer.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that the state should back you? And why shouldn't the arts keep some distance from state influence?
Backing something is not influencing something. I think the state should support the arts because it's their duty. Because you and I pay tax. And that tax is our money. It's not the state's money. It's public funds, right? And the state has a responsibility to support its arts and culture. But the state, no arts and culture will be influenced by the state, because that is something else. That we can't assume that just because the state supports something, the state will have the power to influence. And that is the reason that in many countries you have that arm's length distance, right? Right now, in this kind of emergency, the state must come in because it is the biggest player, whether we like it or not. It is the biggest player that we have. It has the maximum amount of money. It has your and my money. So for you and me, for the average citizen of this country, the state must support the arts and culture sector. Having said that, in India, we've always found private support to support the arts, right? So whether it's India Foundation for the Arts, we are just a very small organization actually, Rishabh. We have very small grants. We make about 45 to 50 grants. Our grant sizes are like 1 lakh to 6 lakhs. So it's very small we are talking about. The reason we are seen as something much larger is only because there should have been 10 organizations like IFA, we started in 1993. We started making grants in 95, 96. And we had hoped that, in the next 20, 30 years, there'll be 10 organizations like us supporting different aspects of the arts independently. And like you said, keeping its distance from the state, because that's where all the exciting, creative, political work can happen with support like that. But unfortunately, in this country, we only have like a handful of organizations that are supporters of such initiatives. Yeah.
Arts is also a very social sort of practice. It requires you to come in contact with people. It requires you to collaborate.
Yeah.
It requires, so to say, a lot of proximity. But
Yes.
we are in the era of social distancing.
Yeah.
So how do you think this is going to impact the arts in the long run? Because physical or social distancing is here to stay.
See, Rishabh, I will call it physical distancing for now and not social distancing. वैसे बोलो तो social distancing तो we all had. If you grew up in India in a particular caste, in a particular community, in a particular class, you are doing social distancing from the time you're a child. You go to a school, in your class, you ask around, mostly people will be from your religion, your class, your caste, right? Social distancing we are born with. I think this is the time to get rid of that social distancing. And what we are talking about is physical distancing. And that is going to impact the arts. In what ways, in how many ways, we don't know. I was very thrilled to see the other day a little video from Taiwan, I think, where performances have started happening in venues, but with great precaution, so like in a hall of like 100, where 100 people can sit, 20 people are sitting with enough distance from each other. They're all washing their hands, when they're sanitizing themselves when they're coming in, going out. And I was like, okay, so dheere dheere, some semblance of this can come. So I think it's going to impact it. It depends on how long this fear is there, how long, not just the fear, but also the actual risk of the virus is there. So some people say, oh, once the vaccine is out. I have another worry about the vaccine, that in a country which already has boundaries of privileges which nobody can cross over, even if there is a vaccine, who's going to get it? Will again the rich and powerful get it first? I mean, it's not even a question, right? It's a rhetorical question. So it's not necessary that any of these things is going to change the way we behave in society and what this fear has done to us. So I think while at one end, a lot of artists are thinking very seriously about the digital world online, that can only go to a certain extent, right? And there should be better ways of figuring out how to use more accessible software, accessible platforms, without compromising the aesthetics and the beauty of the forms, of the different forms that we're talking about. But say something like theater, which is essentially a collective art form, not just in its making and presenting, but also in its viewing. You watch theater with 30 other people in a venue, and that collective experience of watching it is also something that is very particular to that live art form. How is that going to shift and change? I think one will have to see, but one can't. I don't think it's a good idea to say that we're all going to go online for everything. even in its physical form, taking the precautions that we must take, I think new ways of adapting to that form will emerge. And I think some amount of funding can go to those kind of new imaginations. So if there is a theater group sitting somewhere figuring this out in a city, I think support should go to those kind of experimental. This is the time for experiments. We've always said, support experimental ways of looking at things, innovation. This is the time to innovate. I think just saying go digital is an easy way out. It's like you're not working hard enough. That too, even I knew, one could have done that anytime. But to actually imagine possibilities within this physical distancing, but social inclusion, how can we make it happen in the physical world, in the real world, online and offline, in both ways. I would be very excited to for IFA to receive proposals like that. And for the team, because we work very collectively, for the team to, think through this together and help develop proposals.
So clearly, this is also an opportunity for disruption from traditional forms. There's a question from the audience from Rashmi Dhanwani.
Yeah.
Have you received any responses from any of the state governments on your proposed approach?
Well, we have received, hi Rashmi, thanks for asking that. Trust you to get straight to the point. We have received some responses which have said that they have received our email.
So you've received an acknowledgement.
Yes. And honestly speaking, I'm quite delighted because I'm also someone who has earlier done petitions to governments and have not received any response. So I think an acknowledgement is a good thing to begin with. And all the members of ADA are like hawks looking at the email account, are we receiving response? Are we receiving response? So, yeah.
So Rashmi has another question. What does the spectrum of resilience look like? The assumption is that someone should be able to cope fully with setbacks. What if they are able to cope, say, 50%? What does resilience look like across the spectrum of our capacities to be resilient?
See, I think this is a very, this question itself can be discussed for about an hour, right? What does resilience mean during this time? And I think resilience has to come in many forms. And as I was trying to understand the concerns through these different sort of onion rings, the self, the field, the larger ecology, the larger socio-political condition of the country, I think resilience will also need to work at those various levels. I think the first moment of resilience for the arts sector would be to take care of yourself, to not go insane, to not lose confidence, to imagine that this too shall pass, and to hold each other's hand at a moment like this, because not all of us will have the same resilience, but we can certainly as a group stick together, share ideas. Small organization like Rashmi's, like ours, talk to each other and ensure that we are there for each other. I think that's the first point of resilience. Share ideas, share platforms, share the knowledge that we have, share expertise. So for example, I feel that all the 3 fundraisers that I did were not for IFA. They were not for IFA's constituency, because I know IFA has a solid team. I have a fantastic group of people and we work together, we work collectively. We have an amazing set of donors and we believe that we're going to receive support and we are asking for it parallelly. But I feel it's part of my resilience to tell myself that don't go have faith, that I felt I needed to raise funds for the sex workers and trans people who are friends of the community, or for the weavers now, or what I did with the others at ADA, because this is the time to share whatever, experience we have. I'm a total talentless person. I can't sing, I can't, do theater, I can't make films. But if raising funds is something, building solidarity is something that I have learned, then that's the least I can share. So for resilience would mean sharing solidarity.
So you touched upon an interesting theme that sharing your wealth at a time of great need is also a form of building solidarity. Do you see emerging solidarities within the arts sector to respond to the current crisis and beyond?
Yes, some. I mean, some people have obviously, like, it always happens, right? Some people stand out, like sort of shining beacons, and some of them, I don't want to name anybody specifically, but some of them, if you go to the pages of the fundraisers, you will see the people who are giving not just money, but also advice and bringing together. So one organization I do want to talk about is Ghosh. And Ghosh has this program called AXA Art Think South Asia, which builds capacity for arts managers. And what I really liked is the moment this happened, Ghosh did a series of meetings with their different batches of alumni of AXA, and they then put together discussion forums. Like, it was almost like, okay, this is what we have. We have an alumni. What can we do with that? So looking for resources within what you have. And so another organization, MAP, Museum of Art and Photography, they did this bouquet of flowers, so these are paintings that they had, and then they created a property out of it. We got excited at IFA and we said, okay, so we are building our archive. It's already out there. Some of the years are out there online as well as offline. So could we make our emails, because now we don't have events, right? So could we make our emails into spaces for sharing some of the outcomes of our fantastic grantees, their archives, their material. So we are sharing work of photographers, of other archives they've built, of performances they've done, of course, with their consent and their permission, because the copyright is theirs. But this is also a way of building resilience, telling ourselves that we will continue to thrive. We will continue to do what we have always done against odds. It's almost like, thoda sa lalkar ke kehna ki, yeah, you've seen our resilience every time something has gone wrong. So this is another test. And the thing is, for the arts and culture sector in India, the tests never end. The difficulties never end. The challenges never end. So it becomes yet another one in the run of challenges that the sector and individuals in the sector who are so full of courage, so full of inspiration, have to face all the time.
Arts is also, form and function. So the art form in itself is great, but unless it, presents itself as a function for the greater good of society, it will always remain in the realm of the privileged. What do you think? What do you think the arts needs to do to, make itself relevant right now as a function of societal good?
I don't agree to what you said, if I may. I differ, because I think that you are assuming that the Lok Shahir in Maharashtra, who is singing about her community, in her head thinks of it as a function. She doesn't. That's life for her. So art is actually, it's many things, but it is also ponderings on life. It's sharing lives. It's sharing struggles. It is not necessarily a function in that sense. Art in itself, just by being there, serves so many purposes, which includes living, being human, understanding compassion, understanding empathy, being what we are to each other, to live in this world together with each other. So I don't necessarily think that art needs to have a social function. Art inherently does, by being art, by being what it is. Because often, I'll give you two stories. One is, when anybody plants a sandalwood tree, so it takes some 80-90 years for sandalwood tree to fully grow and give it full fragrance to the world. So anybody who actually plants it hardly gets to see its impact. So often we don't know what immediately, like it's not like building a school where you know that 10 people are getting educated. There also we don't know what they're doing with their education. So that's something else that we have to track. Education on its own need not necessarily be a great thing, what it would do to the people. So the thing is, with art as well, you don't know what its impact is going to be. The second is, suppose I ask you, to kal aapne ye gana sunna, how has it changed you as a person today? You'll find it very difficult to answer. It might, or it's something that you might realize, no, that's what I felt then. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. I think it's giving me a
just
okay.
Momentarily there was a crack, but it's
okay. So I'm saying that the art doesn't necessarily have to find a function like that, but the art, just by being a critical practice, does great amount of work in society just by being there. If it's doing nothing else, it's healing people.
So there's of course going to be a lot of post-COVID pondering on how the arts should be, and right now clearly there's no long-term or sustained response to the arts. What do you think could be a structural response to arts reform in this country once the COVID situation is over? And what could be done to put the spotlight on the arts?
By whom? Do you mean what should be the state's response?
The state's response, or let's say a societal way of looking at the arts.
I think that for the longest time, we have not given arts and culture its due place in society, in our education systems. We talk so much about
your voice.
Yeah, just one second. Can you hear me now? Let me.
You're muted now.
Yeah, no, I just muted it and then, yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So, I think first need to give its due place and thought of
the voice is
again. Just one sec. I mean, yeah, everything seems to be okay. So it just is saying that my speaker is not working.
But now now it's all good. You're muted now.
Just raise your hand and tell me if it is a problem.
It's all right.
Okay. Yeah, so especially in our education system, we never took art seriously and we never understood what it and often when we look at, can you hear me?
I think when you go slow, we can hear you. The moment your voice picks up pace, it starts.
Okay. So I can speak slowly. Yeah, can you hear me then? Yeah, okay. So I think in our education system, we have never given enough priority. Again, it's going off.
I think you should continue. It'll go through.
Okay, sure. So we never give enough priority to the arts. The arts teaches us compassion, but often we look at education only as a means of getting a job or a means of getting income. And then we complain, why is there such humanity in the world? Why do people care about each other? They don't, because in natural education system has taught them to be human. And that's the role that the arts can play. So I think every possible way to bring the arts and culture back into our lives, to understand its potential, to allow it to bloom, especially for children, especially for young people, for the arts to have a role in their lives. And the state and non-state systems, the economies, the fragile economies within which artists function, various kinds of art forms that they function, that receives and are there easy loans available? I'm talking about from scratch, you know. Well, are there rights and say properly protected through legal systems? Agencies that can help them understand is there minimum income that they can earn? All of this needs to be looked at, so it's a huge list of things. And I think if there is a think tank that can bring people together, 20, 30 people who've been working in the arts, to create this master plan, that would be amazing. And right now, you're locked up and little that they're doing outside, through this.
I think it's useful for the last 10 minutes to not have your video, because I think it's your internet that's acting up.
Okay.
Maybe your sound will be better. There's a question from the audience, from Reena Diwan, who asks, what are your thoughts on building support from people who are not linked with arts beyond cinema, which is not limited to a few fundraisers?
Bina, I didn't get your question. Are you saying how to?
So the question is that how do you get more people who are not currently involved with the arts to get them involved? To have more people who are beyond the current pool of people.
Actually, I can't imagine anybody who's not connected to the arts, because I can't imagine anybody who either doesn't any of these already connected to us. And all I think is for people to start and find this organization.
Can't hear you at all, Arundhati. You're on mute.
Oh. Is there a way I can go out and come back? Is that possible?
Yeah, you can
leave the meeting and come back? Yeah, let me just try that. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So you'll have to repeat. It
will be better.
Let's hope that.
Yeah.
So I think you'll have to repeat your question.
I was responding to Bina's question, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think I can't imagine anybody who's not connected with the arts, because anybody who reads a book or listens to music or watches theater or a film is connected to the arts. And we have been trying, to get, so through our Friends of IFA program, which is, you just pay 5,000 a year and you become part of this family of people connected to the arts. And then we send you newsletters and we send you invites to events, and you get exposed to this whole world of the arts. But that's just one of the ways. You could be a member of a museum in your city. You could be supporting your local theater group which is there. You could be looking at supporting regularly probably a group of musicians that function out of your neighborhood. While organizations like ours, which are facilitative organizations, reach out, arts organizations also reach out who are who are artists themselves. I think it will also be good if citizens can reach out to artists, and not only wait for artists to reach out. And it'll be great, actually just to walk out and say, okay, so how many artists live in this neighborhood? Can I find out? And see if there's something we can build together. I hope I have responded to her question.
Well, as one final question I'd like to ask, is how do you feel the arts and this whole cultural sector of the future looks like? What do you imagine it to be once we go back to, let's say, business as usual, whatever that might look like?
Firstly, I don't want it to go back to business as usual, because business as usual in the arts and culture was never good for arts and culture. So I hope we move to a new tomorrow. There is nothing like business as usual. There is nothing like what was quite normal. Can you hear me? Or again, you're having trouble?
There's static, but I think you should power through.
Yeah, so I think I'm looking at a future that is different from before, that is more supportive of the arts, and find the industry or
I think there is a lot of static.
Yeah.
So I think we'll sort of close it for today.
Yes. Okay, sure.
But thank you so much, Arundhati, for joining us and for answering.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emma, for translating this into
Thank you, Emma. Yeah.
And thank you to everyone who watched and listened. We will put up a recorded version of this video soon.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Veta. Thank you to all your team. Thanks.